All right. What's going on, folks? Welcome to the Xander Sage podcast, back after about 7 weeks of a deep inner journey, which I'm still in the middle of, but I feel that I'm, out of the thick of it. So I'm out on the other side here, and I want to share some of the amazing things that have been coming through in this Karma Yoga program. It's been 7 weeks now that I've been living at an ashram in Mexico in Mazunte. And the ashram's called Hridaya Yoga, and it's a school that combines Advaita Vedanta, Tantra, Hatha Yoga, and Christian mysticism, as well as Sufism. So it's really a bunch of different spiritual traditions. And this particular program that I'm in is called the Karma Yoga Intensive Course. And it's a very intensive program all around Karma Yoga, which is a branch of yoga related to yoga or union through action. So yoga means union. And then when you bring karma yoga into it, it's actually achieving that union with the divine through action in the world. So I have a strong meditation practice, and I'm also an entrepreneur, and I like to create. And before the program, I noticed that there was almost like there were two versions of me. There was a version of me that was on the meditation cushion, very peaceful, very calm. And then there was a version that would go into work. And this version might have a little bit more anxiety, a little bit more contraction, a little bit of a sense of rushing. And it was really not a peaceful experience oftentimes. So my intention coming into this course was really to learn some skills to bring some of the consciousness that I experienced in meditation, some of the peace, some of the openness, and bring that into the work environment so that my whole life could be a vibration of love and light. And the program has been absolutely profound. So coming in, I was intending on sharing more along the way. I was intending on recording this podcast every single week and sharing updates. And it's 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, 13, 14 hours a day oftentimes. So it's a very intensive program. We have teachings every single day, and we have meditation and hatha yoga and as well as karma yoga, which is service-based work here on the property. And I just found that with all of the deep internal processes that were happening, there wasn't the bandwidth to do this every single day or every single week. But now a lot of that has transpired, has passed, and it's still ongoing, but there's so much more light in my being now and so much more strength and so much more clarity that I'm in a place where I can come back to the podcast. I'm really excited to be here with you. If you're listening, I'm delighted to have you here, and they'll be picking back up. A lot of my podcasts in the past were very focused on readings from the Bible, reading from scripture, and analyzing those from a lens of non-duality. I will bring back that format from time to time, but I think go forward, there's a very good chance that the podcast takes on sort of a multi-dimensional relationship with spirituality, considering yogic philosophy, Christian mysticism, non-duality, Tantra, Hatha Yoga. It'll be very focused on spirituality and awakening and awakening the Christ consciousness within. That's going to be the main focus, but I'll pull on different realms of spirituality. But today's focus is really going to be some of the major milestones that I've come across, and it'll be more of a story format and letting you into my world a little bit. So this is going to be a great opportunity to learn what is it like to go on a very deep inner journey. I'm on 63 days now, so I have more time, but this is a really deep process. So if you've been feeling a call to deeper spiritual exploration, to getting to know yourself better, to coming into a greater sense of naturalness within your being, a greater sense of authenticity, a greater sense of self-love, if you have a longing to know God, to know spirit, then these reflections could be really useful for you. And similarly, if you just are looking for some things that you can do to bring more peace into your life, there's going to be some great takeaways within this episode for that as well. So it'll be a bit of an arc touching on the journey over the last 7 weeks. So it started off early September, mid-September. And so it's a karma yoga immersion program. And just to give you a little bit of background on karma yoga. So frequently it's talked about as if karma yoga is the yoga of selfless service. And that's even like the perception that I had coming into it is karma yoga is all about service. And the first 4 or 5 weeks of the program, we actually didn't talk about service at all. We talked about our state of being while we're in work. So right now I'm in a particular state. Right now you're in a particular state. And when I say work, actually that's too specific. It's while we're in action, right? So any action could be cooking dinner, it could be going on errands, it could be going to work, it could be doing community service, but it's just action. And so a lot of times people will have kind of habitual programs that come online where the mind comes up with an idea that says, "Oh, I need to go to the fridge and get some food." And then it's just automatic. We walk to the fridge, our mind is thinking about something else, and we're just going about our life because it's a habit that we've done so many times before, so it doesn't require deep presence. It doesn't require all of the faculties that we have to be online. Karma yoga says that way of operating, that automatic mode that we can live in, where we are in the mind, not in our present moment experience, and acting in the world, can lead to significant levels of disconnection from our actual lived experience, which ultimately brings a sense of disconnection within, brings a sense of disconnection from life, brings a sense of anxiety, brings a sense of something being missing, of, I don't know if you've ever had this sensation of like, there's got to be more than this, or something's missing here, or, I've done so many things in my life, I've checked so many boxes, but I don't feel it, or I know there's more depth. These are all indicators that presence is lacking, that a deep presence in our hearts is lacking. And that's really all it comes down to. But when we say presence, a lot of people have never had any training in presence. So we start on the meditation cushion and we learn how to quiet the mind. We learn how to soften. We learn how to rest in stillness. And then the next kind of wave of that, next iteration of that, once you've done a little bit of practice, whether it be asana practice or meditation practice, is to start to bring that state of being, that state of consciousness out into the world so that life becomes a walking meditation, a walking offering to spirit, a walking offering to yourself, to be deeply connected to yourself in all moments so you know what the authentic movements of your being are, so you know what is true and real for you at all times. And this way, we can stay in our true nature, we can stay in our center no matter what's happening in life. Even if there's something crazy going on at work, even if someone's triggered and projecting at us, even if we have a lot to do and there seems to be stressful. Once we learn how to maintain our center in all things, life just becomes a joy. And that's what I've started to experience over the last week or so, is just an incredible amount of joy. Even when times have been hard, it's been woven with an incredible amount of joy because I recognize the beauty of life at a level I've never recognized it before. So the first thing I wanted to start off there was kind of a brief introduction to karma yoga. And in the start of the program, we really went into different ways to embody this presence. And I'll probably go into these in more detail in future videos. If you're curious to learn about them, please feel free to send me a message, or you can join the free community where I'll have more detail on them. In the future iteration of the podcast, I think I'll probably dive into some of these things. But the beginning of the program was focused on that, establishing our presence. Then after about 10 days of that, we had a 10-day silent retreat. And the first 10-day silent retreat was a challenge for me. It's probably my third or fourth silent retreat, my second 10-day one. And this one, I got to meet all of the different parts of my ego. So if you're familiar with parts work, it's the idea that there's, multiple parts in our psyche. It's also known as integrated family systems from a psychologist named Dick Schwartz. And it's beautiful work. It's cutting edge breakthrough in psychology and shows how, our mind has different parts to it. And each of these different parts can have a different personality, different needs, different desires, different fears. And oftentimes these parts are at war with themselves, or oftentimes they're stuck in a pattern that was developed at a young age. And they don't realize that we're actually older now. They might be stuck in a traumatic loop from something that happened at 7 years old. Or maybe they're stuck at a job where you got laid off and they're still operating from that frame. And ultimately, these parts can create a lot of disturbance within our mind, within our energy field, and within our consciousness. If they're not operating in harmony, if they're not at peace, then they can kind of take over the ship. So the second week of my silent retreat was getting to know these parts in a very deep level of detail. So, I've done silent retreats before and I've done a lot of parts work before. So I had thought that I had done this. But in this program, because I was in the stillness and it was 20 days at this point living in an ashram, and my spirit knew that I have months ahead of me, it was like this, this opening came and said, okay, now is the time for us to look at all the stuff we haven't had time or space to look at. And you're going to get hit with it. So it's just like, doof, 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 one thing after another. And it really was a challenging time. I would say it was dark, and I leaned on prayer heavily. I heavily leaned on prayer, deepened my relationship with Jesus, deepened my relationship with Mother Mary. And prayer was what got me through. I was meditating, 5-6 hours a day, doing an hour or two of hatha yoga, listening to a lot of lectures. But prayer from the heart is really what was able to get me through. And in the prayer here, is so crucial to come from the heart in an authentic way. When we pray, if we can get to the deepest, rawest emotion in our heart, if we're in a space of despair, then to pray from that despair. If we're in a space of sadness, then to pray from that sadness. If we're in a space of aliveness, of gratitude, then to pray from that gratitude and to feel the radiation within our hearts. And that's the key. That's like, if we just pray from the mind and we ask for something, it's almost like we didn't pick up the phone. It's almost like we stood next to the phone that connects to the Father. And instead of, we tried to pray, but instead of like hitting call and then waiting till there was an answer, we just started talking into the phone, but it never connected. So we connect. The dialing is going to the authenticity of our hearts, going to the deepest emotion of our hearts and seeing what is the longing. Because if we pray for the true longing of the heart at the deepest level, then it is offered, it is answered. And that's what I've experienced here. And it's been absolutely beautiful to see the asking you shall receive come to fruition. But it's because I've been so connected to myself that I've been able to ask for what is truly a longing and what has truly been placed on my heart by God. So I got to meet all these parts. And then the next few weeks, we were back to the karma yoga cycle out of the silent retreat. The way the program worked was first a week and a half of service work on the property, karma yoga style, then a 10-day silent retreat, then 3 weeks of service work again, and then another 10-day silent retreat. And now we're back in the service work cycle for another couple weeks. So after the first 10-day retreat, we had 3 weeks. And here I got to see, while working in karma yoga, we learned more principles about karma yoga. We learned how to deepen presence in the heart, how to stay anchored in the heart in everything we do, how to constantly come back to the feeling of beingness, this feeling of existence. When someone says presence, some people think, oh, I can feel my legs, I can feel my arms. And that is a form of presence. Some people feel subtle energy in their hands. There's an even more subtle level that a lot of the sages in India talk about, which is the I am feeling, this sense of beingness. And you could even tune into it now. It's just feel like I exist. I am. I am. And this is one of the most profound teachings of Jesus, of Ramana Maharshi, of Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. Many of the different sages across all wisdom traditions come to the power of the I am. One of the things Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am. So this is the level of consciousness that we've been moving towards. Identifying not with the physical body, not with the mind, but identifying with the field of existence that we are. And that can be done on a subtle level by just tuning into the frequency of the I am. So this was a big part of the Karma Yoga over the next few weeks, was working from that presence and recognizing that when we do so, when we detach from the stories of the mind, when we detach from the sensations of the physical body, and when we start to relate to ourselves more as a soul, then the importance, the pressure, the stress that we often place on our work, and that also often comes from taking action in the world, starts to evaporate. We start to recognize that everything we're doing is just grace. We stay in our hearts, we stay in a loving frequency, and we are interacting with the world from grace as an offering to God in appreciation, in reverence, with humility, and with a joy to be here, to be operating, to be living. So this is some of the beautiful teachings that came through in the next 3 weeks. And I also had the opportunity to, all these parts that I discovered in the first 10-day silent retreat, I had the opportunity to be with them in day-to-day life and see how they play out and see how they direct my life, and how at what areas different ones step in and other ones might get run over or feel like they're not seen or heard. So I got to really like map out my psyche and start to let the show unfold, and start to see it all. And I had a big shift here. I used to really approach, I spent a lot of money and time on personal development the last 5 years, probably 100 grand on personal development, spiritual development, entrepreneurial development since 2020, and a ton of my time and energy. And, I don't regret it at all. It's made me into the man I am today. And it has, but it came with this energy of trying to improve myself, trying to better myself. So there was a strong force behind it. In yogic philosophy, they call this a rajasic energy. You might be able to relate to it as if you just had a cup of coffee. And so you have that extra kind of like mental drive, and there's a little bit of or a pretty significant activation of the nervous system. The sympathetic is active. There's a stress state happening. And so I was very much relating to personal development this way, where I was trying to improve myself and pushing, pushing, pushing. And it was quite exhausting. One of the parts I discovered was a part that was just tired of that way of being. And at this point of the program, I took on a new frame. I said, I'm not trying to change these parts. I'm not trying to change anything within myself, actually. I just want to know myself. I just want to develop deeper self-awareness and get to know myself intimately and accept every single thing that arises with open arms, with love, non-judgment, with compassion. And this is when things really started to change. This is when different parts of me started to feel safe and calm down to get along with one another. And this is when, even when that wasn't the case, even when there was still chatter of the mind, I could just accept it. Even when things didn't calm down, I was in a place where I could say, hey, I accept that sometimes there is still chatter within the mind. Sometimes there is still resistance to certain things. Sometimes there are still triggers. I accept all of those things. I see them for what they are, and I allow them to pass through and materialize, and I accept. And I don't need to change them. And it's this feeling, authentic movement that says, I don't need to change any of this, but I want to see it. I want to be with it in full presence. So taking all those skills that have been learned through karma yoga and through presence and being with whatever is arising in non-judgment. This has really given me an incredible sense of inner freedom. So this is where I was coming into the last retreat, which was a week ago. It finished. That was a 10-day retreat. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. My mother and father actually came down to Mazunte. My mom sat in the 3-day retreat. This was her first meditation experience ever. So I think I guided her on like 2 meditations just before she came. So she had a little bit of experience, but those were 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And here she's meditating for a few hours a day. So it was really beautiful to see the impact and the light that was sparked within her. And it really brought us a lot closer too, which was really beautiful. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to meditate with close friends and family members and share that space of peace. Anyways, I digress. The 10-day retreat there, I had all of this exposure to different parts of myself. I had worked with those parts. So then when I came into this 10-day retreat, there was so much more availability and space within for me to really go deep. And this is by far the deepest I've ever gone in a meditation retreat. So we're about 40 days, 45 days into the program overall that I've been living in the ashram at this point. So you can imagine, I've been doing a lot of yogic practice, a lot of meditation. There's a lot of availability. And I had this huge shift in my awareness, in my meditation practice itself in this 10-day retreat. For the entire time that I've been meditating prior to this with Hridaya, it's a heart-centered meditation. So your awareness is on the heart center, and people often use the physical heart and the beating of the heart as an anchor for that. But the space of the heart is actually a field within it's a dimension of our being that is not physical. But the physical heart is a portal that can take us to that space of the spiritual heart. And I used to approach the meditation like taking my mind and focusing my attention on the heart, almost like I was grasping, kind of like that coffee energy I was talking about earlier, trying to hold on to the heart. And in this retreat, I had the huge breakthrough to rest in the heart. To rest in the heart, how I did that was kind of imagining my awareness at the top of my head and then slowly letting it drop down, almost like a sinking anchor in the ocean, but not just moving it with the mind, but letting it relax every step of the way, letting it relax and relax and relax until finally I'm arriving in the heart with a sense of resting. And even the mind rests in the heart. And once this methodology was adopted, it became very clear to me that this was the way forward, that this was how to go deeper. And almost immediately, I was rewarded with extremely deep meditations where I was able to tap into the field of luminous awareness and really come into a much deeper connection with spirit, with God, which is that awareness that is ever present within ourselves, within all of life, within everything. There's a reason why the Christian tradition talks about how God hears everything. And it's because God is everywhere in all things. And in a deep meditation, you can actually get to a state where you feel this and you sense this field of awareness that is God. So I have this incredible experience during one of these meditations where I was deep in this field of awareness, deep in a deep connection with spirit. And I was able to actually see myself not as the physical body, not as the mind, but as a makeup of different thought patterns, different emotional patterns, different energetic patterns that all were like, clouds or figments of matter within the field of consciousness. And the amazing thing here is it was like in an instant me recognizing like, oh, this is actually what's happening. Everything that's that I think is me thinking a thought or me feeling a certain way. The me was too identified with the physical body. Whereas in non-duality, and even in Christian mysticism, the me is the field of awareness. And these things that we identify with, the thoughts, the emotions, the ideas, the goals, all of these are just expressions within consciousness, within the field. They are not who we are. And after I had this awareness, I remember leaving the 10-day retreat a couple days later and walking around outside and just like in awe at the beauty of life. Like, wow, what a magician God is to have created such a masterpiece. How beautiful, how lucky we are to live this experience, how lucky I am to receive these teachings, to receive this wisdom, to know this truth. And I was hanging out with my guitar on the terrace. I'm learning guitar right now. I'm pretty terrible still, but it's fun. And so I'm sitting there on the terrace, hanging out, having a kombucha, and I'm observing the beach. It's a public holiday. It was a public holiday here in Mexico, and there's many, many people on the beach, and they're all joyful, and then they're having Coronas and tacos, and there's boats going on, and it's just a great energy in the field. And I was just observing everybody, and instead of seeing like people as physical bodies as I normally would, as like we all do, I was actually seeing the field of awareness in which they're walking and relating to them as like specks of stardust with, patterns of mind, patterns of emotion, patterns of identity, and recognizing that none of those things are fixed. All of those are changing constantly. And none of those are who those people are, in fact. So it's this incredible freedom and wonderment that's been arising as this depth comes. And this is a depth that aligns with the teachings of Christian mysticism, with Sufism, with yogic philosophy, with Buddhism. So it's an alignment with all of the great wisdom traditions and with the truth that the sages have expressed. What a freeing truth it is. What a freeing awareness it is. It basically says no matter what is going on in your life, no matter what you're experiencing, you are bigger than it. It is temporary. It does not have control over you. It does not have a hold over you unless you give it to it, of course. But you are free. You are so free. And your true nature is love, compassion, joy, peace. And that true nature is found in the depths of meditation, in the depths of the heart. So I came out of the retreat like fully committed, like, yes, this is what I need to be spending my time doing. I absolutely love it. And I've been meditating a lot since. I meditated for 2 hours this morning, and that's just it's a no-brainer for me at this point. Like, that's the best investment of 2 hours I can make. So that's where we came to after the first 55 days of the program. And then the last week has been taking everything we've learned, which has mostly been internal. Like, if you noticed up until this point, everything I've been talking about has really been internal. And the last chunk of the program, which we're in the middle of now, so I won't elaborate on it too much, but it's shifting from self-centeredness or selfishness, which are different, to service. So self-centeredness might be like your awareness is on yourself, on your own needs, and you're just kind of in your own world, but you don't have like a malicious choice to explicitly go against someone else's needs or to harm somebody else. Whereas selfishness, if, for example, if you're in line for a cookie and there's only one cookie left, but there's like 4 people in the line and you're in the front of the line, if you're self-centered, you might just be like, I'm going to take this because, I'm at the front of the line and I'm honestly not even aware that there's 4 people behind me. But if you're selfish, you might be like the third person in line, and then you might cut to the front and grab it and say, nope, this is mine. I want it. I don't care. So there's a distinction there. And then service, obviously we have that kind of culturally accepted definition of acting for others. That can be a refined contemplation as well to go into what is service actually. Anyways, I think it's pertinent that we're starting to focus on this now. It's taken us 63 days to get to this point because we have to have a certain level of inner wholeness before service is really possible. Otherwise, it can be coming from a place of judgment, of fear, of control, of needing to uphold an image of the self. And all of these things bring contraction and actually decrease the sense of freedom. And ultimately, here, what we're here to do is to awaken the Christ within us, to awaken to our true God given nature, which is spirit. So if we're operating from a sense of moral obligation to serve, it's going to just reiterate karma that takes us away from truth. So a lot of the cleansing that has happened over the last few weeks has been crucial. And now for the next few weeks, we're diving into service. And what I'm finding is it's absolutely a gift. It's been such a gift to go into my own patterns, to observe them, to accept them, to be with them, to study the self at an incredible level of depth, and to get to know God in stillness. And now that I'm starting to open up my attention again and focus on service and focus on giving to others, what a gift that is to be able to take the cup that is already filled up so much and pour it out towards others. So I hope that you got something out of this episode. At the very least, you got a snapshot into what life in an ashram might be like. If you're interested in exploring it further, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find me on Instagram at xander.sage.swanton. And likewise, if you're curious about learning more about any of these topics, if you want to go deeper with me, the best place to do that is my free spiritual community, Awaken Academy. You're welcome to join there. We have free meditations every other week, as well as teachings from the original teachings of Jesus. I'm going to start bringing in some Buddhism and some Advaita Vedanta philosophy as well. So lots of good material for your awakening. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. You have a beautiful day. May be at peace. Much love.